Hi guys, and welcome to the first lecture in the expression section. It's going to be very interesting, the expressions, and if you master them, you're really going to create some fantastic animations without even a keyframe. But we'll go step by step. Now, if you want to follow along with me, please open expressions-start.aep. And in this project, please double-click on the pick whipping composition to open it, and we start working. I hope you're there already. Let's see what we have here. We have a ball or a circle going up and down on a motion path, as simple as this, for 5 seconds only. And the star has no animation at all. Now, if you are in CC 2018 and you want to use expressions, it's good to bring up the parent and link column. For this, you will right-click on next to the name, for example, you go to columns and make sure parent and linked is checked, and you have the column over here. This is used for parenting and also linking properties. If you open the circle now, you twirl it down, you will notice that in CC 2018, every property has a pick whip here. This is a pick whip. You can use this pick whip to link properties, or you can come to the stopwatch, press Alt or Option on the Mac and click on it, and you have the expression, let's say the menu, open for you, and you have a certain space over here, which is the editing space for the expressions. Now here you have 4 icons. The first one, it says enable or disable the expression. Now it's disabled, now it's enabled. The second one is for show post expression graph. After you have created an expression, you can go to the graph and see how the graph is behaving for this expression. And you have another pick whip, and you have a small arrow here that says expression language menu. If you click on it, you will find that After Effects has hundreds of expressions over here. Now, there is no need to learn all of them to learn about expressions or about linking. It's good to learn only the most common and the most useful ones. Some of them, you really need an expert level to start working on them. To cancel the expression, if you don't want it at all you have to do is to come to the stopwatch, press Alt or Option on the Mac and click on it, and here it is, it has disappeared. Let's start, for example, taking the star here and deciding that since the star has no animation and you don't want to create any keyframes, you want to link the rotation of the star to the position, because position is animated. If you are in 2018, you can immediately start using this pick whip, but I prefer to go over here to show you more. So I press Alt or Option on the Mac, and I will use this pick whip here. It's the same, in fact. I will click on it and drag it. Notice that I can link to the whole position property, X and Y, or only take one single value, which is the X value, or the Y value. Now, rotation is a single value, so it will be interesting to pick whip or to link the rotation to the X value of the position. Here you are, you release. An expression has been created for you. That's quite cool, right? This expression is really plain English. It says, in this composition, within the layer circle, within the transform properties, please take the value of position 0. Position 0 means it is the X position, so you start 0, 1. So notice, it means in this composition, from the layer circle, go to position here and take the value X, as simple as this. If you want to commit, just click outside and your expression is written for you. Now, if you play, the star will be taking the rotation values from the X position of the circle. If you scrub through a bit, here you are, you notice it's the same value, 259 and 259. Of course, when you increase, it's going to give you a full rotation plus the value here. So it's 438 minus 360. You have the 360 here and the 78. Here you are now, you animated the star without any keyframes. In short, you linked the rotation of the star to the X position of the circle. That's it. So if you don't like the expression, you can disable it and see what happens. Now it's not working at all, it's disabled. Or you can change it. You can change it in different ways. The first way is to give it another expression, for example. Actually, it will be nicer if you pick whip it to the Y. Notice the old expression disappeared, and now you're using from the layer circle in transform position 1, which is the Y value here. If you click out, play, notice now it's going to go left and right because the value of position is going up and down with the Y. Here you are. It's pretty interesting, right, guys? Okay, so now you have the star rotating left and right or clockwise and counterclockwise according to the position Y. If you were to create this animation with keyframes, first it's not going to be easy to sync them, and then it's going to take lots of work. If there is any change in the circle movement, then you have to go back and change the animation. But creating the expression using the pick whip, it's very easy. In this lecture, you are going to focus on how to write or add expressions without using the pick whip now. We're going to get serious about the expressions and start writing them and see how parameters can work in an expression. Notice the movement here of the circle. Comes over here, okay, and then the animation stops completely. That's pretty cool. Nice animation. But then what happens if I want this ball to continue being animated till the end of the composition without having to, replicate the keyframes, and if the composition goes longer, I have to add keyframes and stories like this. I want to use a simple expression. The expression I'm going to show you now is very useful and widely used. Let's come to the beginning here, and we want to add an expression to the position so it can continue playing the keyframes over here till the end of the composition. So of course I press Alt, click on the stopwatch, and then there is the small arrow here. If I click on it, come to property, there are here nice expressions such as the wiggle. We'll see about that. There is the loop out. This is what we are going to use now, and we'll see about the others later on. Let's take the loop out, and you notice the loop out has a type, which is cycle, and number keyframes is set to 0. Well, these are really not the parameters, it's just the syntax. You can just come and delete them. Okay, so we delete all of them except the parentheses. Now notice how loop out is spelled. The O is uppercase. Please don't write it in small case, it will make a mistake. The expressions are case sensitive and language sensitive, by the way. So now if you play, the loop out will start playing the first keyframe after the last keyframe. Notice what's happening. This is the last keyframe. The keyframe that is played after, or the motion that is played after, is the first keyframe. You see how it jumped without having any keyframes on the timeline, of course. So the loop out will loop your keyframes from the last keyframe, starting from the first one, till the end of the composition. So arriving at the last keyframe, you play the first keyframe. Let's go back to the small arrow here and go to property, and you have loop out here with a cycle and number of keyframes. Let's try cycle. I know a couple of them. In fact, there are only 2. In the cycle here, you can replace it, for example, with ping pong. I put double quotes and write ping pong. This is one parameter that you can change like this. I will delete the number of keyframes. Okay, we don't care about it for now. And even I can delete the type, because this is just syntax. And if you click out, here you are. If you play now, the ping pong effect is that it does not continue from the first keyframe. It continues from the previous keyframe. Notice how the ball, when it comes to the end, just over here, it will play the previous keyframe. Let me show you now. So you are at the last keyframe. The next motion that is played is the previous keyframe from the last one. Here you are. Okay, then you have the third keyframe or the fourth one, and it's playing again. So actually it is now pinging. Comes to the end, it will be ponging. Okay, if you like to. So now this is pretty practical. Notice how the star is still moving with the loop out. There is also the number of keyframes. You remember there was here a number, if you put comma, and there is a number you could add here. I will add, for example, 2. At this point, the ping pong will only play the last 2 keyframes because it's a loop out. So it will work on the last keyframes. If you play here, after the last keyframe, it plays the previous one, then go back to the last one. You notice? Okay, cool. So you have a very nice animation here. Imagine the things you can do. You have a car, a planet, I don't know what. So much, even the characters that we have animated with the pin tool. You can use the ping pong 2. And let's try, for example, ping pong 3 now. Okay, so it's going to be cooler even. Here you are. Comes to the end. and then goes back 1. That's the previous keyframe, then the 4th keyframe from the beginning. So this is the job of loopOut, and it's pretty useful. Please start using it. The other one we're going to work on is the loopIn. If I come to property, you have the loopIn, cycle, and number of keyframes. Let's just put the loopIn. If we play like this, it's not going to do anything, because the loopIn is the inverse of the loopOut. The loopIn now works the other way. Let's go to the end of the composition by pressing N, select all our keyframes, and click and drag them and snap them to the timeline at the end. So the loopIn will start playing from the last keyframe and then go back to the first keyframe. Here you are. Notice how it started playing and we don't have any keyframes yet. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now the animation you can create here with the number of keyframes, let's say we add 2, and it's going to be pretty cool. Here you are. Notice how it's playing them according to the time, of course. Start with the first one, second one, comes back to the beginning, and so on. Of course, you can add here the ping pong. So I will write double quote, ping pong, and close the quotes, and don't forget the comma here. And here you are. I think it's okay. So notice what's happening. Let's go back to the beginning, and we play. So it goes front and back from the beginning, okay, from the first keyframes here, and then it will continue to the last keyframe, and notice how it's playing only the 2 keyframes. LoopIn is the inverse of the loopOut. Now, this is very, very easy to use, but showing it to you the first time, you might say, oh wow, this is difficult. Actually, it's so easy. Now, the way to work is like this. Let's remove this one. We don't want it. Let's select all the keyframes and just snap them to the beginning here. I will come over here, press Alt or Option on the Mac, and click on the stopwatch, and immediately type loop out. And here you are. You have your expression looping out everything. Not always you want to come to the arrow and pick the expression. You can just click here and type it. In this lecture, you are going to learn how to use expressions on the source text, and it's very useful later on when you're doing bars and graphs and maybe kilometers, whatever you like. It's extremely useful to learn this method. Let's add some text. I will take the text tool and write 1, 2, 3. There is no meaning of writing a good text here because we are going to use the expression to have the value for the source text. If you come to the text now, I'll click on it and put it on top and trail it down and go to the text. We have the source text. Let's enter an expression here that is linking the source text to the X position of the circle. I will come to the source text, press Alt or Option on the Mac, click to get the option for the expressions. Now notice an error message has appeared. Don't worry about it, it will always appear. And you have here text.sourceText. Now I'll use the pick whip to link it to the X of the circle. This is the X of the circle. I click and release. Click out, and you have here a very big figure. Okay, actually it's the very right figure to, I don't know, so many millimeters or decimals or whatever it is. You need to round this figure. And to round it is very easy. Here I will show you how to use the JavaScript math. And it's very easy, don't be scared from the word. I will come to the beginning here, just at the beginning of the expression. Click on the small arrow and go to JavaScript math. There are so many very nice ones because I love math. And you have the sign, square root, exponential, and so on. The one that you are interested in is math.round, and you notice in brackets it will require a value. So I will click and choose it. Of course, now it's a whole mess because I put the expression of math just in the beginning. The value here that I need is obviously the value that I pick-whipped from position 0. So I will just delete here, including the bracket, the value. Let's give it some space so you can see it nicely. Come to the end and close back the parentheses. Okay, here you are. Now, notice it has rounded it. So math.round will round it and remove all the decimals. So now let's position it over here, okay, and play. you notice that the value is going with the X value. This is very important because it's very much used when you're doing graphs and charts, a pie chart increasing, which we're going to do an example, and also a bar graph. You want to show the values moving or increasing, so you will use this strategy. This animation is cool, but not that cool. Let's make it better. I would like the text to go horizontally with the circle. The circle is going up and down, that's very true, but I want the text so the circle comes over here. The text also moves from here to here. Okay, so how I'm gonna do that? I need, of course, to link the X position of the text, or position 0 of the text, to position 0 of the circle. Let's try it. Let's go back here, select the text, and go to the transform. And on the position here, you can use this pick whip or Alt stopwatch. On the Mac, it will be Option stopwatch and pick whip. Now notice I'm gonna pick whip very nicely to the position, and I'm gonna use X. Notice what I have done. I linked the position, which has two parameters here, X and Y. I linked it to only X. And now over here in the expression, it needs to return two values, one for the X and one for the Y. But I only linked to one value. So it has created a variable called temp, and it has put in this variable the link itself, okay, that's position 0, and then send an array. This is an array of two values. It has sent the array back to the position X and Y. Of course, they are identical. And now if you move, you notice it's going diagonal because the two values are identical. Well, I need to fix that. The way to fix that is to remove the Y. Okay, I deleted it. But I cannot send no value. I have to send a certain value. The best value to send is its own value. And this will mean to pick whip the value inside the expression to the position 1 of the text itself. Here you are. You notice? Okay. So we have now temp coming from position 0 from the circle, and the next value, which is for the Y, is coming from transform position 1 of the text itself. I click out. If you play now, here you are. Notice how it jumped. It jumped because this is where I positioned it. Okay, I can still reposition it up and down, but not left and right. Left and right will not work. Up and down will work. So I'll put it over here. And now you have a very nice animation where the text is moving horizontally or on the x-axis exactly with the circle itself. You can use this method to link one property to another property when the property requires two values, and you just pick whip. I hope this gave you a lot of insight and you can start working even better with the expressions. Welcome to linear interpolation with expressions, or interpolation linear. It's very important that you learn these expressions and also you do a lot of practice, because believe me, you can do great animations using them. I prepared here a small animation for you. I hope it looks neat. There is this little ball that is oscillating left and right using the loopOut ping pong and two keyframes. If you play the animation, it goes to the right, then to the left. If you look at the motion path, you will notice that the motion path is a linear motion path, but it is Bezier interpolated. So if you right click over here, you come to keyframe interpolation. The spatial interpolation is continuous Bezier, and I adjusted the handles somehow. You can make it even better the way you would like. So the ball actually is moving on a motion path with coordinates here of X and Y. And you can see the animation goes between 235 for the X, and at the end here, I think it's 1690 for the X. What we would like to do is this oscillator here, when the ball is on this side, it also rotates. I opened already rotation, just over here, okay? Something like 55 or 65. And then when the ball is on the other side here, I want this guy here to rotate now on the other side. Here you are to, for example, minus 65. I prefer minus 65. How would you achieve this with the pick whip? Actually, if you try to pick whip the rotation to the position X, you're going to have a very funny value, because it's only growing in value and it's really not what you want to achieve, just rotating on its anchor point. So that's not the solution. The solution here is to use a special expression. It's called linear expression under the interpolation group. Click on the small arrow here, go to interpolation, and you have here several linears and ease. And you have a linear one with minimum and maximum and 2 values, and you have the ease with minimum, maximum, and the values. These are the ones that we are going to use here. I will select linear. See exactly how it works. Well, it's very easy, by the way. T is what you want to evaluate. And you want to say, when T reaches T minimum, give it value 1. And when T reaches T maximum, give it value 2. As simple as this. T minimum for value 1, T maximum for value 2. In between T minimum and T maximum, interpolate a value between value 1 and value 2, or interpret a value. So it will find a good value through a linear algorithm and return it to rotation. Cool. Let's do it. It's easier to do it than to discuss it. So what I'm going to evaluate here is the position X. So I will take the pick whip and bring in the position X here. So the minimum here is 235. That is the start of the animation on the left side. So I will write here 235 and comma space. Okay. The maximum is when it's over here. Don't worry about the error. We'll correct it. The maximum is over here. It's 1690. So I will come to the maximum and say 1690. So now I have found out the minimum value and the maximum value for what I'm evaluating, which is the transform position 0. So for the minimum value of 235, what value will I want to return to rotation? We have looked at it. We said 65 degrees, right, guys? For T maximum, or 1690 over here, what is the value I want to return to the rotation? And we looked at it. We said minus 65. I hope so. It's not the other way. Okay. Minus 65, and we delete the rest. Okay. So now, for 235, return 65. For 1690, return minus 65. In between 235 and 1690, return or interpolate a value between 65 and minus 65. Let's click out. Wow, I did a good job, guys. That's what's happening. Here you are. You link them together. It is so easy to use the linear. Actually, what you have done, interpolated the value of the position into a value of the rotation. And it's so cool, guys. If you come in between here and you change the position, okay, just like this. That's what's happening. So cool, guys. Okay, let's create another keyframe over here. And let's move the position down and move the X. That's our interest. That's what's happening. And if you interpolate again, here you are. The only trick there is, do not exceed the maximum and do not exceed the minimum of the position. And actually, you have a very nice animation here with the timing. Select all the keyframes and right click and go say rove across time. So we have the same timing. Okay, here you are. Notice how this one is just following. Just use your imagination, guys. You have a spaceship following another spaceship. You have a guy, pointing a gun, for example. Or I don't know, a periscope coming out and trying to find the submarine. You can use this linear interpolation to create such animations at 100%. It's time for you now to go to After Effects and start playing with the linear interpolation and interpolate a next value into a rotation. I will see you in the next lecture with more about interpolation. In this lecture, I will introduce you to the wiggle expression. The wiggle expression will return somehow random values, and is very much used to wiggle something, to make it move left and right, up and down, whatever, in a kind of a random way. We're still in the project expressions-start.aap. Please open the file, and then within this project, go to the composition, interpolation, rotation to linear, and it's over here. Now we have a kind of a speedometer here. And our aim is to wiggle this needle, if you like. We want to go left and right in a random way. And the best way to do that is to use the wiggle expression. Let's open the rotation now. Alt and click on the stopwatch. go to the arrow over here and go to property. You will find that you have wiggle and you have temporal wiggle. So it has 5 parameters here: the frequency, the amplitude, the octaves, the amplitude multiplier, and the time. We're only interested, and we are going to work with the first two, the frequency and the amplitude. So I'll click and select it and delete everything. The frequency is the number of times per second you want a value to be returned to the rotation. So for example, let's say 2 values. What is the amplitude? The amplitude is like how much you want to wiggle. Let's say if you give it 100, it will wiggle 100. So some confusion about the concept here. The 100 is not minus 100 plus 100. Actually, this is amplitude. It's gonna wiggle 100, meaning it's gonna wiggle from 0 to 50 and from 0 to minus 50. And you have 50 down, 50 up, the total is 100. I will show you how it works. Let's play the animation. Notice how it's wiggling. It's not going to minus 100 and it's not going to plus 100. It's just getting values in between. Now, this is very nice. It's wiggling, but it's not exactly what you want. How do you discover or find out what are the values that wiggle is returning to rotation? Well, this is very easy. I would like you now to go to your graph editor. And in the graph editor, you most probably don't see anything. Select the rotation, and you notice here you have the wiggle expression. To see the values and the graph of the wiggle expression, you come to the small icon here, show post expression graph. So it will show you the graph after the expression. If you click on it or highlight it, now you can see the values, provided that you are in the value graph. If you go to the speed graph, it's going to show you another kind of graph which will denote, of course, the speed. So let's go to the value graph, and these are the values that has been returned by the wiggle. Well, guys, you see, these values have been returned, and that's it. They are never going to change. It's not a random value. Every time you press the space bar, these values will change. No, these values are set as soon as you put the wiggle expression. If you play now, you will notice how it's working. Actually, let's scrub through. Let's come over here. And if you remember, we put 100 here. This is the amplitude. So it is minus 50 and it is plus 50 over here. I don't know if you can see it. The amplitude goes from minus 50 to 50, which makes it 100. Of course, if you take the absolute value. So the space that is wiggling in between is 100. It is not from 0 to minus 100 and from 0 to plus 100. So now the minimum amplitude here, the negative one, is around minus 56. Cool. So over here, it even went beyond the minus 50 or the 100. And the maximum amplitude is just over here. I can see it on the graph. It is 45. So actually, this is how it's going to wiggle. From minus 50 to 50 in concept, we have a small value here on top, and that's it. Logically, we'll say, let it wiggle 90. So it goes minus 90 plus 90. No, it doesn't work like this. If you want minus 90 to 90, then you have to wiggle 180. And yet, this one even will not work. Let's wiggle it at 180, and notice it went out already. We go to the graph, and your lowest point here is minus 101, much more than the half. It does happen. This is the object of the wiggle, to give you some kind of randoms. In our case here, it will be very good if you put, for example, 150. Okay, go to the graph. Okay, here you are. This is the maximum. I'm cool with it. Look at the needle. And then I go up here. Yeah, cool, fine. So this wiggling is pretty cool. I'm happy from the values. Let's go back to the speed graph, and you have a different kind of graph with the speed. And notice here how it's jumping up very fast, then going back slow, and so on. So this is the wiggle demystified. And it gave us a chance to work with the post-expression graph. Now what I would like you to do here is to go back and write this wiggle expression in the rotation, because in the next lecture we are going to interpolate with the small node over here. We continue from the previous lecture. In the previous lecture we added a wiggle for the rotation, and we set it to 150, and we looked at the graph just over here. We notice we have a beautiful graph with certain maximum values on negative and positive. If you haven't done so, please add the wiggle here so we can continue with our animation. Our aim in this lecture is to animate the knob over here. You want the knob to wiggle with the needle. If the needle goes on the right, for example, the knob will come over here. If it goes on the left somewhere, let's say over here, the knob will go over here. So actually the knob will be wiggling with the needle. Cool, I will undo this. And here we are going to interpolate the rotation to position. You might be asking that we did already an interpolation over here. In this animation, we interpolated the X position into the rotation. So here we have taken the position 0, which is X, interpolated and returned it to the rotation, and that was the only single value we needed for the rotation to operate. Well, here it's a bit different. You are going to interpolate the rotation into the X value. That's true, but then you need to return two values, one for the X, one for the Y. You cannot skip any of them. Both of them must be returned. How to write the expression here could be a bit tricky, and as soon as I show you, you will notice that it's so easy. So let's start. I will press Alt. If you are on the Mac, press Option. Click on the stopwatch. We are into the expression. And of course, I'm going to go up and bring the linear interpolation. Put it over here. What is T? T is the value that we want to interpolate. In this case, it's going to be the rotation. So I will use the pick whip to pick the rotation. Okay, here you are. Now, what is T minimum? Well, we know from the graph that we can discover what is T minimum. Let's go have a look for the rotation. Here you are. This is, of course, we are in the value graph, guys. Now, if you notice and scrub through, you will see that the T minimum here, or the minimum value here, is minus 84. And the maximum value is plus 67. This is for me. Maybe when you are working, you might have different values. It doesn't have to be identical values to mine. So we said minus 85 or minus 84 and, minus 62. Maybe we take minus 85 and 85. That will be cool. So the T minimum will be, I will delete T minimum, minus 85. And the T maximum is going to be plus 85. You can put the minimum and the maximum to any value you want to find in your graph. And if you are more precise, the animation will look a bit better. Value 1 is the value of the knob on the T minimum here. So I will select the knob and go to the beginning. This is where I want the minimum to be. And notice it's 246. Okay, I'll put it at 250. Here you are. I'll put it 250. Value 2 is the value of the knob on the x-axis just over here, okay, which is around 1062. Let's say 1000. It will work nicely here. Okay, 1000. Now, you might say, okay, it's done. Actually, it's not done, because here you are returning a single value, just the interpolation, into the position which requires two values, x and y. You need to work on the expression here to return the two values. We are going to start using variables. The first variable, I'm going to call it x, because of the x position is equal to the linear interpolation. Now I need to add another value within the expression, which is for the y-axis. So let's go ahead. We say y equal, and actually I'm going to pick whip. If you do pick whip, then you can change the position up and down of the knob. If you do not pick whip, then you put a rigid value like 1000, 5000, whatever you like. Then later on you won't be able to change it. You have to go back to the expression itself. So now it's time to return these values. You are going to return an array, which is made of two values. To return an array, use the square bracket. You open the square bracket. You say return x. So x will go to the x, not because it's called x, but the first one will go to the position 0, and the second value will go to position 1, and you close the bracket. Well, that looks neat, but it's not done yet. In JavaScript, you need to end the line with a semicolon. This is for the interpreter to read this line and knows where the line ends and then interprets it. That's how it works. So the semicolon will help identifying the end of line. Over here also you need to put a semicolon. This is the end of line. And then XY, you don't need to put a semicolon here because there is nothing after, and obviously is the end of the line. Cool. Let's click outside. Let's press spacebar and play. Here you are. It's working at 100%. So this lecture was about how to use variables X and Y and how to return an array with two values. As simple as this. So now you know how to interpolate between a single value to an array with two values. I will hope you will use the techniques I showed you here and create some fantastic interpolations. In this lecture, please, you need to open the interpolation rotation to linear XY. We are going to work on the same animation that you have done before, but we are going to do some changes. And I want you to change this one because it's going to be a reference for you. I will close the previous one. In this animation, we interpolated the rotation into the XY value of the position, and we learned how to return an array of X and Y. You have used the Y variable just to return the second value into the position. Actually, we can care less about the Y in this animation. We can put it anywhere and still work. This is very good work, but in motion graphics, there is a simpler and better option if you like. And I need to show you this option, otherwise this section will not be complete. Instead of working on the position which has X and Y, you can right-click on position and separate the dimensions. Very interesting. If you select this option, now the position has disappeared, and instead you have X position and Y position. If you come over to the transform, you will notice now you have X and Y. If you press P, you will still have X position and Y position. Of course, you're talking about position. So now you have the ability to add an expression only on the X position. To save on time in this lecture, I will double click to open the rotation linear and select the knob, press EE. I can see the expression over here. I will click inside, and all I want is to copy this expression, the linear one, so I don't have to retype it. I press Ctrl C. On the Mac is Command C, of course. Go back to this expression, come to the X position, press Alt or Option on the Mac, click on it, and then just paste. So now I have only the expression here. If I click out, here you are, your animation is working as before. So separating the X position and the Y position when you're doing expressions or other animations, if you like, will be quite interesting and will simplify your work. That was the tip. In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to create a pie chart. And in the next lecture, I will show you how to use the expression controls to control the colors and the percentage. Let's start by creating our pie. So we use the ellipse tool, come in the middle, click and press Ctrl and Shift and open a circle with a very big stroke. Now, if you use the trim path here, as you know, okay, and use the end, you will notice that it's gonna trim the stroke and the background. Well, we don't want to do that, but we need to fix it, of course. So let's delete the path here for the first time. Let's select the ellipse and rename it to background. So I will write background. The background here, we want to remove the stroke. I'll come to stroke and just remove the stroke. Now let's duplicate this one. And then let's rename it to pie. In the pie, we are gonna put the stroke at 50. And then the fill, of course, you want to cancel it. If you added the trim path to the pie itself, this is the trim path, and if you play with the end or the start, here you are, it's working very fine. But as you notice here, the background is smaller than the pie itself. You need to adjust this. And the best way to adjust it is to move the stroke using the offset path. So I will delete the trim path again, and I will select pie and add an offset path. Now you know about the offset path. Be careful, it has been added above the stroke. If the stroke is 50, I will put it at minus 25. And now it's okay. If you add the trim path, you notice that the background and the stroke itself are in the same contour or the same binding box. But notice where the trim path is starting now. It's over here. That's because you added the offset path. So the best way is to offset also by 180, if you notice. Just a way to notice there is no right figure. And we are cool now. We can create our animation. Let's create it using the end. Come to the end here. Keyframe it. Put it at 0. Then after 1 second, we put it at, for example, 75%. So now you have your little graph here. Let's add some text in the middle. First of all, I'll go for the selection tool and then center the pie in the middle of the comp. Here you are. I will go for the text tool and type in, for example, 1, 2, 3. The font size is okay. The font is okay also. Let's put the anchor point in the middle of the text layer, then also center the text layer. I'm using here Control Home or Command Home to center. Now we need to make the text, come with the percentage of the pie. So you come to text, you know all this already. You come to content and you want to link the content to the end. So I will just use the pick whip and just drop it over here. Now it's pretty cool, but it's showing just a figure 60. I want to add the percentage and I want to make sure it's not decimal at all time. So we'll come to the expression and come to the beginning of the expression. And you know that you have to add the math.round expression. So I will add math.round, open the brackets, go to the end and close the brackets. Now it's going to be a round figure. That's okay, but I want to add something else. I will add plus and add the percent. Now I can add the percent as a character because there is the math.round. If the math.round was not here, you will have a figure, a number with a character. It will not work. But in this case, it will work very fine. Here you are, pretty cool. Now let's adjust the opacity here. I mean, appearing at 0% is not cool at all. Let's open the opacity here. You could keyframe it, but I'm going to play a game here, which is nice. I will take the pick whip and pick whip it to the end. Cool. Now, if you scrub through, you notice that, the opacity is starting at 0, then goes to the end. Unfortunately, it stops at 75%. Well, to work this one out, I will come to the expression for the opacity and multiply by 10. So when you multiply by 10, from 0 to 10 frames, it's going to go from 0 to 100%. You have a nice opacity. And here you are, you have your pie. You can come and play around with the stroke if you like to make it a round stroke. Okay, let's go to the pie one. And this is the stroke one over here. And instead of line cap, for example, use a round cap. It becomes a bit nicer. Okay, if you like to. I want to keep it to butt cap. Now that you have your pie over here, so I will pre-compose just over here. I will come to pre-compose and call it pie 1. Let's open the new composition. And in pie 1, I want to trim it to the region of interest. Click on region of interest, just trim it just like this. It will be cool. Doesn't really matter much. And then we go to composition and crop comp to region of interest. In the next lecture, I will show you how to use the expression controls to control the percentage and the color of the pie itself. In the previous lecture, you created your first pie chart. But now the project was about creating 6 or 10 of them and displaying them on the composition here as pre-comps and adjusting the values. Now imagine what kind of job you have to do now. You have to go to every pre-comp here and double click on it, go find the end, adjust the end, and don't know what. It's really very tedious. In this lecture, I will show you how to use the expression controls to control all these charts in terms of number and the color of the pie itself in a single layer. Let's start. So I'm back now to a single pie, and this is where we left off. So now we start, adding the controls, and then we will duplicate. Well, if I want to control at least the percentage for this pie just from here, I need to put the controls in this composition. The best way to add controls is to add an adjustment layer, add the controls to the adjustment layer, and then you come over here, manipulate the adjustment layer. It's very easy. I'll show you how. If I right click, go to new, and I add an adjustment layer, of course it comes on top. I'm going to click and put it on bottom. And actually, I don't want even to catch it, so I'll put the scale to 0. That's a small trick. Now it's like impossible to see it here, but it still operates very fine for what we want to do. Now let's go to effects and presets. You have here expression controls. I will focus on the slider control and the color control for this lecture. Let's take a slider control and drop it on the adjustment layer. Now, the effect controls panel open because this is an effect, and you have the slider over here. First, I want to lock this panel. If I lock it, when I change compositions or change effect, it's not going to disappear. It's going to stay here. And over here, we have a slider. Let's keyframe this slider exactly like we have done for the end in the trim path. I will keyframe the slider over here. Come to the layer, press U to see the keyframe. Go after 1 second, for example, or as long as you want, and of course put it at 100%. Now, if you turn down here, you will find the slider, it can go to 100%. But when you come to the value here, this slider can go infinite almost. So I keyframe it again to 100%. So I have the slider here and absolutely no effect at all. Let's go to the pie now and select the shape layer where we have the pie. Press U and we have the end here going from 0 to 100%. Let's pick whip this end to the slider itself. Here you are. Now if you notice, it's working pretty fine without even the keyframes anymore. Here you are. Because the trim path has taken the values of the slider for the end. Let's turn down and see exactly the expression itself. Now notice what's happening here. It's pretty interesting. First of all, is no more this comp. It is comp main pies. It means go fetch from comp main pies, so you're changing comps, from layer adjustment layer 1, the effect slider control, and from within the effect slider control, take the slider. Notice we have slider control and we have slider. Let's rename the slider control now pie 1. As simple as this. Of course, the expression has changed. Let's go back to the main here and select the adjustment layer. Press enter and rename it controls. Let's go back to pie 1 and you notice the expression is pretty neat. Comp, main pie, layer, controls, effect, pie 1, slider, and of course is the slider. Cool. If I come back here, now already it has changed the animation, but of course it's going to 100% like it says here. I will change the value here to 75%. Here you are. It is identical. Pretty cool, right guys? Now let's control the color. You notice here you have color control. I'll click on it, drag it and drop it either on the controls or inside the effects itself. I want the color control here to control the color of the pie itself, replace the white. Fine, let's go to pie 1. And of course, I'm going to go into the shape layer, that's pie 1 over here. Okay, let's make this one bigger a bit to see better. And we go to the stroke. And this is the color of the stroke. Let's pick whip it as simple as this to the color. Here you are, it became red. Now, of course, please guys, come back to the main here and change the color from here. Okay, so here you are, for example, make it cyan, something like this. So now from over here in the main composition, we are controlling the pie percentage and we are also controlling the color itself. Very good. Okay, so now we can come back to the project panel, take pie and duplicate it. So that's pie 2. Take pie 2 and drop it over here. If you go to pie 2, double click, and we select all the layers and press EE to see only the expressions. And you notice that shape layer is still controlled by main pies controls, but it's pie 1. Cool. Let's go here and take pie 1 and the color, and then duplicate them, Control D, then click and drag and try to put them on the bottom. So you have pie 2 and color control 2. Let's come to the expression itself and change just the name. So I go for pie 2 and color control here, just over here, space 2. Now make sure that you are doing the same spelling. Otherwise, you can pick whip again if you like. Let's go to the main pies now. and we select by 2. Let's move it over here. Let's play. Here you are. Very nice. They have the same color, the same percentage. Cool. Let's open the keyframes. And then we can change the 75% here to 35%, for example. You're already there. And change the color now to, I don't know, something nice. Okay, this will be cool a bit. Here you are. So now you have something very interesting here. Just from the main composition, using this adjustment layer that is almost invisible, you have added the controls here, and you are controlling now the two, pi 1 and pi 2. Very interesting, right guys? If you would like to add more, it becomes very easy. Let's go to the project itself, select pi 2 or pi 1, the one that you like, and duplicate it again. That's pi 3. And we take pi 3, we drop it in. So we have now pi 3 on top, okay? And it's here. We can adjust them nicely. In pi 3 here, I will double click. You know, you can add more controls to control even this one. Let's go to the FX control now. Select pi 2 and control 2, duplicate them. Click and drag to put them under. Here you are, I guess so. So we have pi 3, color control 3. It became much easier. And of course, you want to change here to 3 and the color control to 3. As soon as you made the changes, renaming this will not be a problem anymore. Here you are now. We have the 3 of them working. Let's go to pi 3 and make it, for example, 65%. It's already there. Let's change the color and make it, for example, some kind of, purple will do. Here you are. So now after you complete your project, you have duplicated 6 times, you adjust it, you can just start changing the values from over here. So if the boss comes and says, this is not 65%, this is 32, this is 85, this is 30, or whatever you like, and change the colors like this, change the color like this, and then it's very easy for you to just adjust the controls from the main control here, which is the adjustment layer. So the main object of this lecture is to create the adjustment layer, add the controls in the adjustment layer, and then start duplicating and creating more compositions and having a single control from a single layer. Here you are. I propose to you this challenge. It's actually very easy, very simple. It is not hard work, but quite some thinking. There is a trick that you need to discover. But it will demonstrate your ability to do motion graphics. It might seem, very complicated with linear, I don't know what, expressions and stories. Maybe, maybe not. I would like you to think about it. I would like you to think how you are going to create this animation. Actually, what you have here is a bar that's going minus 30 degrees and plus 30 degrees on this side. And of course, you can guess it, there is a loop out here to make the continuous movement. And I made it seamless by going to the end of the comp here, putting it at 8 seconds, so it's seamless. Now, how would you make the circle roll on the bar up and down? What would you use? You studied a lot of motion graphics until now, and you studied a lot of After Effects. So please, try to solve this challenge. Think about it. Try several methods. Don't go too far. Just think as necessary. The trick here is to be lazy. It's not hard work. It's just, a trick that you need to discover. And I hope you will discover it before you jump to the next lecture. From previous lecture. This is the challenge I proposed, or a top challenge if you like. And many of you are coming to this lecture knowing very well how they resolve this challenge. And you will be surprised how easy it is to do this challenge and to resolve this enigmatic animation. It seems so, at least. If you want to open the solution project file, it will be in expressions-top-challenge-solution.aap. So what is this all about? How did it happen that this ball is almost stuck on the bar and is going up and down with the bar? What are the expressions that have been used? Well, actually, none. I want to show you something here. Select the bar and put the visibility off. Notice how the ball is moving, okay? Is moving on a motion path that's going right and left. It's somehow curved, right? Let's select it. Here it is. Inside the layer, if you press double E, you will see the keyframes and you see ping pong. Of course, ping pong is just to make it bounce left and right. But actually, there are no expressions here. There is very easy and not complicated. You come to the bar, double press E, and you will see there are no expressions at all. Here you are. So now it's working fine. You know, this is about using your imagination. How would you have imagined the circle moving? It's not being connected to the bar. It has a certain motion through a simple path, actually. And then the bar itself has been added at the end. If you do like this, you will notice, okay, it would have been good to create the ball motion path, then add the bar, and make sure the bar is going with the circle and not vice versa. Of course, I apologize here. You would have done this if you knew the solution. But if you didn't know the solution, of course, you started with the bar, right, guys? Well, this is to prove to you that many very enigmatic and very beautiful animation in motion graphics are not complicated. It's about imagining the right path. It's about imagining how you can do it and not complicating things. Make them easy, simple, and surely expressions are very useful. But complicated expressions and JavaScript will not lead to a high performance animations and beautiful animations. So thank you very much for listening and taking the time to do this challenge and to look at the solution. I'll see you in the next lecture.